Welcome back to the next episode of the GSD Golf Podcast. I'm your host, AT, and boy, are we excited for this episode. We have our first two-time guest, a returning guest from season 1, episode 2, Ben Esposito from In the Golf Zone. Ben's been a very busy man helping junior golfers develop their mental game when it comes to the game of golf. And Ben, thanks for joining the show. We're super excited to have you back.
Hey, how's it going, Anthony? Great to be back.
Super good. We've stayed in very close contact since your first appearance on the GSD Golf Podcast, and we're really excited to have you back. Want to just jump right in. I mean, we're midway through the 2024 season, 2024 calendar year, and a lot of our junior golfers, I know in high school golf and in college golf, seem to be more of a fall sport. Maybe not so much in college, but when I look at the juniors, at least in the Pennsylvania area, the season is primarily the fall season. So being that we're here in the spring and very earlier, I guess we have the just unofficial start of summer with the holiday that just passed. What can junior golfers, and maybe even their parents do to continue that momentum that they started with the mental side of the game?
Well, first is just continuing the consistency of what they did in the off season, right? So a lot of times the mental game is viewed as something that you can get a jump start on in the off season, and rightfully so, because some of us are locked inside winter, our courses aren't open. Lucky enough, I live in a place where it is open all the time, but not everyone has that experience.
See, you're just rubbing it in because you have the nicer weather down there in the Carolinas. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, but for that, it's just to continue that same level of commitment to the mental game, even now that you can go outside and you can practice. It's really just it's about not dropping the ball on that.
And so when you say not dropping the ball, a lot of your programs, at least a lot of the sessions that at least we're going through in our experiences in partnership with you, with Simba, it's a lot of those conversations and then coming out of the conversations with their mental coach and trying to put those pieces that you're talking about to action. So
exactly.
Is that something that you can elaborate on how a junior golfer can take that conversation piece and put it to fruition, make it happen?
Like I said, in the winter, it's a lot of education, learning about it, and then now it's time to put it to action. Like you said, really, we have all the context, but how do we do it? And a lot of times that has to do with working through the shot process, applying that shot process to their tournament rounds, and then really tracking that shot process in a way to sort of quantify the mental game for them almost as a stat. So they can look at afterwards, really reflect on, hey, how many times did I really commit to this? How many times did I do the steps in my process, not for the sake of doing them, but because I really believe that they would help me. And I'm really doing it as a means of being engaged with getting the best result I possibly can out of every shot.
And if you're just tuning in, we are with Ben Esposito from In the Golf Zone. Ben, talk to us about handling the pressure of tournament season, tournament play. I think that's something that even like you said, we're putting in the classroom time, we're working on our swing, we're working with our mental coaches. But once you put it into action and you get out there on the course, sometimes that pressure builds a little bit. What are some triggers? What are some things that some of the junior golfers can rely back on to calm their nerves when they're in that tournament play? I know for us, it was fascinating to me. We had a really kind of in-depth conversation around the fact that Simba's a little bit of an introvert. And then when he gets excited, sometimes those extrovert traits that dad has tend to come out on the course. And so it's funny, I can start to, as a parent now, I can start to see that unfolding. But what are some of the things that kids maybe can put into play during those pressure situations?
So as you said, it's somewhat dependent on the context of the person, right? And what their personality is like, generally speaking. However, for everyone, universally, you can do things like breathing techniques. And there's several breathing techniques, some that are better for between shots, some that are better right over the ball. The simplest one is a relaxation breath where the exhale is twice as long as the inhale was. And that just gets you in a state that you're ready to play right away. And you're ready to hit the shot that you need to bring yourself into the state that you need to be to execute without all the high level thinking that went on into preparing yourself for the shot, choosing your club, the wind, the lie, and all that. And that's what tends to sometimes get overwhelming for juniors, as well as having a process that gets you into a state of being able to commit fully, confidently to the shot. And as I said earlier, not just simply a routine. That's a list of steps that you go through the motions, right?
I was gonna ask you that very question, right? Because the routine, when sometimes I think when you talk to a junior golfer, even just a golfer, it's that you hear the pre-shot routine, but you're talking about even a little bit more.
Yeah. So the routine I see almost as the physical steps, but the process is the combination of the mental and physical steps. And I try to avoid using the word routine because sometimes that's lumped together with the morning routine of brushing your teeth and just completely checking out mentally and not even being conscious of what you're doing. And you want to get yourself into a state mentally where you're confident enough to execute the shot. That's the priority, right? So whether or not I do two practice swings because I do two practice swings, if I just do those two to make myself feel better about what I'm doing, that doesn't 100% work. You want to be doing those swings to really truly prepare yourself for the shot.
And a lot of times in your coaching, and again, Ben Esposito in the Golf Zone. Ben, before we go any further, how can people reach out to you, learn about your services, and maybe schedule some sessions?
Oh, so the number one way, typically I get contact through email. My email is ben.espositogolf@gmail.com. You could fill out a sign up form on the website inthegolfzone.com or reach out to me through any of the social channels at In the Golf Zone on Instagram, In the Golf Zone on TikTok, In the Golf Zone on Facebook. And
You're on all the major socials
yeah,
for sure. That's for
exactly.
sure. But the key takeaway there, I think, is in thegolfzone.com. So much information there. There's a free test they can take,
Consultation.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you take a quiz through the mental golf type program, and then you also get a free consult with me where we go over the results of that, as well as learn a little bit about each other, your goals, and then verify the results of those quiz so we can hit the ground running as soon as we start working together.
So let's jump back into this. We're talking about tournament play and leveraging the power of or I'm going to say power of the junior golfer's mental game. Last time you were on, we talked a little bit about the visualization techniques and things that the junior golfers can do. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how they can use that to their advantage of almost seeing it before it happens?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a long list of ways, right? But the simplest tool would be to stand behind the ball, and some people would either want to see a shape, and others would have a specific flight where they see the start line and finish line. Now, when you're training, that can be a tough thing to do. And a lot of people I've worked with, and especially when you're under stress, you would get behind the golf ball and go, well, I don't see anything. I just see the ball, right? And the ground. So,
Almost like their head is just focused. They don't
yeah.
even like lift their eyes or head.
Or they're trying to visualize, but they don't know. Like, I'm just seeing the sky, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to see here. So, an easy way to train that first is to start with the ball where you want it and then actually play it backwards and bring it back towards you and then execute the shot from there. Now, there's obviously a lot of other creative ways to do that, but that's the first probably way that I would train to do it. Start seeing things in reverse, and then you can then start seeing things naturally.
And so a lot of our juniors are, like we talked about earlier, are in that season, that tournament season, and we talked about the pressure already. But talk to me about how can they leverage the training that someone that comes to Ben, comes to In the Golf Zone, is working on their mental game. When they go through a slump, right? Whether it's a slump on the range, because sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes we all go through. You go out on the range and you
Yeah.
just can't hit a ball straight. You just can't get right on the range. But sometimes, and more impactful, I think, because I think some kids can rationalize, okay, I had a bad day on the range. But when they go out on the course in a tournament and they have a bad day or a bad couple holes, and they kind of end up in a little bit of a slump. Talk to us about some things they can do to start getting out of that slump.
Well, I'd say the first thing, if it's like a long-term slump, right, to acknowledge it, but not to the point where you reinforce it as a part of who you are. So a lot of
Okay.
times I see people, I'm struggling, I'm struggling, I'm in a slump, I'm in a slump, and continuing to tell yourself that over and over again um, helps reinforce that in your mind to yourself. Or I'm struggling with this, or I've never been a great putter, or something like that, right? And
Right.
that's only going to continue to reinforce those beliefs. So going back to the visualization stuff, it can actually be done at a large scale as well, as far as visualizing yourself acting as if you are where you want to be, or you're out of that slump, or what
I
was
like
it
that.
like when I was playing well, or what was it like before I went through this experience, and not looking for that from the perspective of what was I doing physically, but more so how was I feeling before I reinforced this idea into my head. Because the last thing you want to do is start to identify with yourself as a struggling golfer, or as a golfer struggling with that specific part of their game.
Want to just continue this part of the conversation, but you talked about a prolonged slump.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking about what I'm hearing you say when you talk through this. I'm hearing you say almost like shut it off. Like that is not who I am as a golfer. I know that I can get back to that feeling, that experience I had a round ago, a tournament ago, whatever that was. When you talk about a prolonged slump, when should a junior golfer acknowledge what they're in and then try to pivot?
I would say, if it becomes a pattern, right? Sometimes people try to diagnose too quickly. Oh, one shot,
Yeah,
right?
one
And
shot, right?
I gotta fix it now. And even when it comes to a short term on the course, I say you should probably make that same mistake at least 3 times, or 3 times in a row before you start to say, oh, well, maybe I got to look at something here, right? Because you just
Right,
end up chasing yourself back and forth. You fix this, you
right.
fix that, you fix this, you fix that, and it's a never-ending cycle at that point. But
So
it's really,
what I'm hearing you say is that to our junior golfers out there, and even our parents who are tagging along and watching
yeah,
these kids play, just because they have a bad tee shot, they're playing 18 holes. They're probably hitting the ball anywhere from, if they're a prodigy, anywhere from 64 to 104 shots. Just because they have one bad hole or one bad tee shot, that doesn't quantify a slump.
yeah, or a swing, or anything even being wrong. There's nothing to fix, right? You've got to understand what your patterns are, and then that's where you look into it. And it could, I think, really the answer to that is it's how the player is feeling, more so than like a
And so
physical symptom.
we talked about using that, leveraging that to move forward, acknowledging this, and then going back to that feeling again. What are there physical traits, physical aspects that a golfer can use to almost, it's like when you walk into a restaurant and you smell something, it instantly takes you back to a time when you enjoyed this fabulous meal. Is there something that a player, a junior golfer, can do to make that mental switch back to that good feeling, or is it just something they just have to remember who they are?
A combination of both. You can visualize yourself doing that, being successful like you were. You can have certain triggers for yourself, snapping your fingers twice, touching your glove, remembering that, associating that event with those feelings. And then, to be honest, sometimes these slumps are also caused by physical things too at the same time. So what you would like is to be working on those simultaneously, and then they meet in the middle, right? And yeah, it's probably mostly mental, but there might be one or two setup things or something simple, and then that then also gives you the confidence, and then they meet in the middle, and then that's when things go. So I would say, yeah, sometimes those slumps there's just a 20-25% physical aspect that needs to be addressed, but you want to work on those things at the same time. They're not mutually
Sure,
exclusive. So
sure.
wait until one is done, and then the other, you would think that, oh, well, I'm still in a slump. but if you work on them, eventually they'll meet each other in the middle, and you're getting your confidence back and coming back.
Confidence back, energy's back, the swing looks good. And in the junior golfers, it's really interesting. I was out following Simba a couple weeks ago on a round, and there was a set of parents. We were all walking, and there was an area where we couldn't really see the threesome. We couldn't really see the kids, but as three parents, we all watched our kids. And it was funny because we were all like, we could tell by the body language of the tee shot if it was going to be a good shot, if they believed in it.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see how that plays out too.
Right. Ideally, you don't want to be able to tell that, right? That's part of one of those universal things you can do is, have the good body language either way, because it's easier for you to remember those shots when you associate all that emotion with it too. Those are the ones that are going to stick.
And I want to come back to that question, but real quick, Ben, talk to us about a little bit more about your program, and talk to us about how listeners who have junior golfers who are thinking, because I remember sitting here a year ago thinking to myself, he's just 13. He can pull himself out of this. He knows
Right.
how. He's an athlete, and and it was having conversations with our junior golfer to say, this is how this can help your growth and your maturation as a golfer, if this is what you want. So people that are sitting at home listening and thinking, how do I get involved with Ben? How do I, other than just visiting his website, what are the return on investment there? And I say return on investment because it's time, it's energy. And what I've seen, it's funny for me because I think about the first time we sat with you with Simba, and he was very quiet. It felt like he didn't really talk a lot. And now, he comes bursting out of the room after he meets with Ben, and he's got pages of notes. We go through the notes, and there's just a level of like comprehension and understanding that then transitions to the course. So what can listeners at home kind of get engaged with there?
So for a overview of the program is I'm very holistic with what I do. So I do universal mental game stuff. Like I said, I use mental golf type, and then I supplement that with drills, as well as short game help, general things I've learned, course management, all of that, and all of those things contribute to a player's confidence at the same time. Like I said, multiple things going at once, and then they meet in the middle, and it works out. And yeah, going back to, like you said, a few months ago when we first started working, I wasn't sure if he was super enthused about even doing it, right? Now the sessions are smooth and they go well, and I know he's learning, and it's excellent. And yeah, I provide notes for all my students every time because being such an auditory heavy thing on Zoom where we're talking, and I go pretty hard on the info because I do want to give my students the full hour of info, but with that it can feel like you're getting bombarded at times. So I always like to give the notes because
the notes are super helpful. I think he likes them. I think we like them. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your students. We joked earlier about the weather that you have because you're based in the Carolina area, but you don't just teach kids or junior golfers from the Carolinas or Pennsylvania, because that's where we're from. Talk about, you have 17 states worth of student athletes.
Yeah, it's actually gone up to 19 now. So we're looking for number 20 soon, hopefully. That'll be a huge milestone. But yeah, the reach, because of mostly being online basis, obviously in North Carolina, you'll have the option to do in person, or if you're in the area, a lot of my online students end up meeting, and we'll be doing that soon in a couple weeks, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
But
very excited.
Yeah, the reach and of being able to interact with people in all these different states, and it works just as well no matter where you are. I've had success with students in all of those states. There's no matter where you are, you could still get the benefit, as you guys know. And it's kind of a blessing of people getting used to doing that, maybe during the pandemic a little bit, that this has opened everyone's eyes to distance.
Anything is possible, right? You can reach people from anywhere. Ben Esposito in the golf zone. You mentioned the mental golf type, and I know that everybody has a different type, right? And talk to us about that, and talk to us how that drives your, I'm going to say, curriculum when you're working with a student athlete.
Right. But it's certainly a guide. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
main tool that I use. And what it is we all have mental preferences, kind of like we do our handedness. And those
Mhm.
are split into our energy management, or how we take in the information, how we make decisions on that information, and then how we structure and prioritize all of that. And within those, you each have two preferences, and you end up with a sort of similar structure to other results of the personality quiz that some of us have seen in the past. But what's really powerful about that is that everyone's unique. And if you're not tapping into the ones that you are hardwired to be, you can actually be sabotaging yourself unknowingly, or you're not taking advantage of your full potential. So that's really how I'm able to hit the ground running with my students, because before I even get to know them on a personal level,
Right.
I know how they process info. And we're already making those connections with, oh, when you're in this situation, does this happen? And it's like, yeah. And
You
then the
already have,
next
it's
one,
almost like a cheat
yeah,
sheet, right? You already know.
exactly. Yeah, it's super powerful. It was the development of the program was kind of when I was in my golf days, and I was kind of part of the research of it at the time. And I hit the ground running through the end of my junior career with it, and I'm happy to be able to use it as a tool to share with my students now.
And Ben, we learned last time we spoke on the podcast, we learned you're still a professional playing golfer. How's the summer going for you?
It's going well. We're going through some swing changes, so there's some up and downs, but definitely seeing some good results at the same time. So it's fun. I like doing that as well, and it's also, I found it's made me a better coach, because I'm living the same experiences they are, preparing for tournaments. And not only do I know what it's like to do that as a junior, but I know what it's like now, and I know what
Right.
it's like to have golf be such a focal point of your life and be so important to you. And that's only helped me connect more with my students. And it's getting to a point now where I'm actually viewing my students as accountability partners for myself, where they ask how I'm doing, and if I'm doing my process, and all the above there. So it's been a wonderful thing to supplement together.
We
And
have
I've
to
enjoyed.
assume as a player, you're out on the course. There's some of that training that you have that you probably see play out firsthand when you're playing against these some of your competitors. Whether it's you're probably quickly trying to identify whether you do it on purpose or not, what their mental golf type is,
Right.
and probably are like, okay, I know this person's going to have a breakdown here, or
Yeah.
something's going to go sideways there.
At times, for sure. Like I said, it's fun to know that, because if you're, you know, in a match play setting for fun, I joke with my friends that once I know their mental golf type, we know how to, I know how to get in their head, right? And I don't do that in a tournament setting. For me, that those head games things are typically a distraction, but it is interesting to see. Yeah, I definitely can pick up on, oh, this player is this way, or, but more importantly, I actually can identify the stress pretty quickly. Like,
So
because
you can identify your stress or their stress.
both. Yeah.
Okay.
So like, just telltale sign is just time over the ball, right? That's when I notice, because I'm really in my game, so I'm maybe not noticing a player's how they take in their information or make their decisions, but I do notice when someone's, over the ball for a long period of time, and that I can kind of predict that, oh, they were feeling a little off on that one, and
And it
then I
probably
might kind of,
changes throughout the round, right? You
oh
probably
yeah.
see it progress throughout the round.
Yeah, or it usually get better, but sometimes it comes and goes for everyone, myself included. So
So talk to us about junior golfers. We talk a lot about junior golfers, but what advice do you have for them about the benefits of, leaning into their mental game, especially, at this age, a lot of kids are thinking, okay, I want to go on and play high school. I think I want to go on and play college. Talk to them about the benefits of getting involved, dare I say, getting a fitting now for their mental game as they head into those college or high school years.
Right. Because I would say that that's the biggest separator of those that move on and those that don't. So whatever level you're at, if you're looking to get to the next one, the biggest separator is going to be the mental game. There's plenty of golfers, and even tour players will tell you that there's a lot of golfers out there that hit the ball as well as they do, but they're just not out there, right? And it's usually mental reasons. And the advice would just be to recognize that it's a skill that can be developed too. It's not, some people have it and some people don't. This is
Yeah.
something that can be developed, but also takes that time to develop, right? It's not an overnight thing, but it's it may not appear immediately in practice. You may not even notice the benefits in practice until you get to that pressure situation and you've put the time into that mental game, just like you've put the time into your other skills, and you
Right.
see, wow, when I'm in a tournament, I really notice the difference with this stuff now.
That's awesome. And Ben Esposito in the Golf Zone, talk to us. We talked about blocking the slump and pivoting back to that good feeling. I want to also look at the fact we talked about earlier. We're mid year, calendar year. We're getting into the summer months. And we talked about if a junior golfer doesn't have a great experience, sometimes I've heard some parents say, well, I'm going to keep them out of tournament play because I don't want to crush their mental approach to the game. What are your thoughts on that? What are your experiences there from a coach? Is it better to remove themselves from some of these competitions, or to actually take the training and, although you're having tough times, move forward in that experience, because on the end, when you come out, it's going to be more rewarding?
Yeah, I think it's all in how you look at it, right? So
Okay.
if it's to a point where the player's feeling really, really bad about it, maybe, but ultimately you're going to learn from going there. And, if you're not getting the results you want, the other option is that it is a learning experience. And as you're younger, you definitely want to throw yourself in there as much as you can, and just see what you can control and what you can learn from that. And just honing in on the things you can control temporarily and measuring your performance based on your commitment to that instead of arbitrary statistical goals, I think is a way to train yourself to do that. So then when the statistical goals and technique and all that comes around, like we said earlier, it's kind of that
Yep.
meet in the middle effect,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Where, oh, I've laid the groundwork for this. So now that I'm a better golfer, I'm able to more take advantage of that as soon as possible.
And we talked about almost getting the fitting, right? And the mental golf type will tell you what kind of personality, what kind of person that you're dealing with. For you, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit like a cheat sheet into who you're
Right.
dealing with. But once you start meeting with a student athlete, a junior golfer, it's not like you got fitted for that driver and that driver will last you for the rest of your life, right? Like, people are going to change, personalities are going to grow and alter. Should they get a reevaluation for their mental golf type every so often, or how does that work?
Typically, they're pretty much hardwired in like your handedness. It
Okay.
actually doesn't change much. What would change is you can develop the other skill better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could,
Yep.
oh, I want to train myself to write better with my left hand, right?
Yep.
Now you're probably never going to get to the same natural ability with no thinking that you would with your right, but you can get better at that. And so sometimes that can feel like it's masking it as a new trait, but more importantly, you would over time learn the nuances of yourself, right? So in one way, all people of a mental golf type are alike, but in another way, all people of the same mental golf type are not alike because we're all different people, right? So
Sure.
there's the way that you apply it will then be different sometimes.
So the way you're
your
implying it's going to
preferences.
change your results. It's going to change
Yeah.
how it impacts you as a person. Ben, before we let you go, I know we're coming up on time. I got two last questions for you. One is, how can people find you again on the social platforms? I know you mentioned you're on all those major socials, but what is that handle? And what is that email address?
So for Instagram, it would be @_in-the-golf-zone. And for all the other ones, it's just in the golf zone. And my email address is ben.espositogolf@gmail.com. And as well as, you can always fill out any of the sign up forms on the website. You can find your mental golf type quiz through my website, and my scheduler for signing up for the free consult, as well as any other future sessions, is on the coaching page of my website.
And the website is very detailed, inthegolfzone.com. Ben, you're also proud partners with the Hurricane Junior Golf Tour, with the Under Armour Junior Tour. Any other tours you're associated with?
Not yet.
Not yet. Growing. He's growing.
We've been in contact, but I just renewed the Hurricane for another year today, actually. So
congratulations. That's a great partnership.
That going. Yeah, it's been a great experience. It's part of my ability to reach out. That's how I met you guys at a Hurricane event. So
sure did. Before we let you go, Ben, one last question is, you have that, what's that one thing you would tell a junior golfer, or the parents of a junior golfer, the guardian of a junior golfer, if they're on the fence about, reaching out?
Again, that's the number one thing that separates, those that move on, and really, if you want to learn how to bring your best to tournaments, this is the best way to do it. And really, about me living through and playing golf as well. Not a lot of other mental coaches are doing that at the same time, and not a lot of other mental coaches have played high level golf. So it's that's kind of how I'll be able to relate to the students. And
I think that relatability, I think you're right there. The relatability, when I look at when you look at junior student athletes, junior golfers, that connectivity, because you've been through it, right? You talked about earlier how you started as a junior golfer, right?
Yeah.
You played in the junior tours, and you went through the mental golf type. And I think that connectability helps with the conversations, because you've been there, what they've been through.
And I've experienced it. How
exactly.
Quickly just getting yourself in the right frame of mind, getting yourself to be taking advantage of the way that you think, and you'll be amazed that sometimes it's really not your swing, and sometimes you might be chasing rabbit holes that aren't there. And so
I like that one.
Why do that, and instead, circumvent that process and figure out if it's the mental game right away. And if that's the case, you get yourself in the mindset for if you still need some work on the physical stuff, when that stuff catches up, you're ready to go anyway.
Bold. Ben, thanks for joining the program. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great being on here. Like I said, I'd come back whenever you'd have.
In the Golf Zone, Ben Esposito. Once again, thank you for joining the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to our friend Ben Esposito. Again, mental golf coach, mental golf type coach, great coach. He's currently coaching across 17 states. Really excited to have Ben on the show. GSD Golf Podcast, GSD Golf Community. As always, we're trying to bring you the tips and tricks and tools you need to get shit done on the golf course, with a big focus on our junior golfers. And remember, now we're just doing it in a little bit more comfort with hurdle.